We are very honored this evening to be joined by the three founders of Amate House. So I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Ken Brucks here, Mr. John Haggerty, and Mr. John Horan. So they're going to talk to you.
So we are very happy to be here. It's kind of a tradition that we get a chance to meet the volunteers each summer or early fall as the program starts. And basically, I think they asked us back to tell a little bit about the history of the program, how it got started, kind of what some of the hopes and dreams were when this got started 30-some years ago. I think the reason they're videotaping it this year is that they're really afraid that we might not make it another year, especially Ken.
Uncle Ken's fine, that's right.
So we'll get it down on paper or on videotape this time and maybe not have to do it again. What do you think? One of the interesting things is, as time goes on and memories begin to fade, sometimes you sort of fall back into your own individual perspective of things. And what we've discovered over the years is, as we tell the story of the beginnings of Amate House, each of us has a different story. Each of us remembers it differently. So we'll probably tell you three slightly different versions of what happened. And then we'll kind of maybe go into a little bit of some of our own hopes and dreams and some of the things that we appreciate that have occurred over the years, and as we look forward to yet another year, I guess this is the 29th year of the program, and reaching a number of 716 volunteers over those 29 years, kind of where we hope you will experience things this year. So I'm going to defer to Age and Grace and let Ken tell his version
and I know why, too, because, see, we've done this before, and I tell my version, and then John says, well, Ken doesn't have that quite right for his version, but that's all right. We were seminarians, and there's this program called candidacy where you're saying that you're going to be a candidate for ordination. And the name that was chosen was Amate, which, as you probably know now, it means to love. And so we were sitting around just like this in a dorm room one time, just talking about, in my opinion, what was kind of missing in the Archdiocese of Chicago. We knew about the Peace Corps or the Jesuit Volunteer Corps that sends people hither and yon, but we said what would really be great would to have a volunteer program for the Archdiocese of Chicago. It's so huge, Lake County, Cook County, the hundreds of parishes that we have, and the tremendous needs, which you're probably already aware of if you've looked into where your sites will be. And somebody kind of jokingly said, oh yeah, and we could call it Amate House. And it stuck. And I didn't think it was a good idea because it's going to be a mate. They're going to think it's like, a mating game or something like that, which we do have some weddings out of here, though. But it's not a mate, it's a Amate. And so... you got that? You got that, Amate? Yeah. I don't. What college is that? St. Mary's College? Is that the one in Minnesota? Yeah, you got it. Okay. So, but it really began as a dream of something that we thought was lacking. I won't go into John's aspect because he will, but I think it really follows up on, in my opinion, the dream of Jesus. And the dream of Jesus was to make the kingdom of God a reality on this earth. That's the core teaching, the core message of Jesus. And as you know from your life's experience, that is not happening everywhere. And the need is just tremendously infinite almost in terms of what you could do to make that happen. So Amate House would not be here if you did not say yes to this call somewhere in the last couple of years of your life. Yes, I want to donate this period of my life to the dream of Jesus to make it a reality. It would not be here unless you said yes. So we want to start by saying how grateful we are that you have chosen to be here for this year, and that your yes to Amate House is really a yes to God in terms of your lay vocation, and a yes to continuing not only Amate House, but the dream of Jesus.
Well, my recollection is different. We are on a mountaintop with Jesus. And he had these stone tablets. And we set up tents for Peter, James, and John, and then the tablets were given. No, I recollect that for me, there was sort of, we were just about to be ordained, and there was this dawning anxiety that we wouldn't be able to continue the experience of seminary together. And what I really enjoyed about seminary was we had terrific teachers. Theological reflection, right? So you understand all of these terrific spiritual ideas, you dig into Scripture, and you do it in the light of your human experience. And it's done in community. We're not Buddhists. You don't do it by yourself. So the Christian experience is, we say our Father. It's a plural pronoun. Theological reflection and prayer done in community, and as Kenny said, in service to the kingdom. And we said, oh God, we're going to go into our parishes and we're going to lose this, because that was kind of our experience of our preparation for priesthood. And then I don't know who had the idea, but the notion was, wouldn't it be great if we had this sort of experience of seminary for young adults? Because young adults are the most idealistic humans in the world. Look at you, right? And you're thirsty for authentic experiences of community, kingdom, simplicity, service, deeper appropriation of how we move in God and how God moves in us. And we thought, wouldn't it be great if we did this for because we were young adults, right? We were like 23 or 24, not Ken. Ken was about 70. But no, we thought, would it be great to do this for young people? And, this notion of, we were so unprepared and logistically not on top of this, but, when God has a certain notion about what needs to be hatched on the world, it's amazing how providence will move. And the story of Amate House, it could have shut down 1,000 times, but it never did. So there's an authenticity to this seminary experience you have. But I recollect it being that we were afraid we wouldn't have any, going off into ministry, we wouldn't be able to see each other. It's just sort of a funny thing.
Yeah, to me that the real motivation was, at least for me, was to have a project to work on together.
Yeah.
With guys that I had experienced living with, had experienced ministry with in various pastoral settings, and had experienced, as John said, the opportunity to do theological reflection with. And it's nice to think back that, we had this sort of idealistic notion, wouldn't this be great to create a program for others? But I really think my motivation was to create a program that I could continue working with people whose insights, whose companionship I valued and wanted to sustain in the midst of a life journey that I feared was going to take me off into very individualized paths, or take us off into individualized paths. So I think that that was a lot of it. And when we got together to start trying to figure out what we might do, we had we went about it sort of the way we're going about this, sort of by the seat of our pants. We didn't have a lot of a sense of where we were going, or certainly how we were going to get there. And one of the things that I think it's always really important to acknowledge is that while Ryan and others often graciously refer to us as the founders, we are not the founders of Amate House. We maybe had an idea, but the founders were a much larger group of people, men and women, laymen and women, and it's not just even that original group of what our method was. We got together, and the first decision we made was that we didn't know what the heck we were doing.
That's true.
So the second decision we made was each of us would go out and try to identify 2 couples who knew what they were doing, and preferably had some money.
That's true.
And that's exactly what we did. So we each recruited a couple of people, and we got together for a series of meetings. We actually met over a period of 2 years, maybe monthly, or maybe in some cases more frequently than that, sometimes as a whole group, sometimes kind of in committee. And we just started out by kind of dreaming about what a program might look like, and then gradually, finding sort of a structure to sort of build upon and start working towards. And as John and Ken mentioned, there were a lot of moments along that journey where you know, it could have gone different ways in terms of we're going to do this or we're not going to do this, or it's going to fall on its face before it gets started. And I remember, for example, when I first approached some friends of mine and asked them to be part of that original founding group, it was Paul and Sandra Fulmer. And I had called them up and, you know, asked them if we could get together, and say they invited me to their house for dinner, and I went over for dinner. And as Sandra was kind of, you know, scurrying about getting some stuff ready, Paul and I were sitting down on their back porch, and I sort of laid this out to him, and, you know, with like great trepidation, you know, because it was so unclear, it was so vague, and you know, it seemed like I was asking a lot from a guy who was a really accomplished individual. He was the president of Seltz Seabolt Incorporated, which is one of the big public relation firms in Chicago. I mean, he's a guy who shouldn't have had any time for me, but they had become friends of mine, and, you know, he was gracious in terms of sitting there and listening to me, and I could almost like see him looking at me and thinking, you know, my interpretation of his look was, he is just, you know, really over his head, you know. But what he said was, you know what, I think you can do this, and not only that, I will help you. And I remember thinking that night, I mean, I can remember it as clear, I can see it as clear as I see you guys sitting here today, that we could, you know, this is going to happen. Because people like that, if they're willing to make a commitment to this, this can happen. And Paul and Sandra made a commitment in terms of time. They were part of the board. He was, you know, after our initial, I was sort of the chair of that planning committee for a couple of years, but Paul was our first real chairman of the board that we got started, and he held that role for a couple of years. Paul and Sandra continued to be a part of that board for many years, and put all kinds of money behind their support of the program and their ideas, but they also brought in all kinds of other people over the years. I mean, even now, in the springtime, you know, when we gather for the Amate Magic fundraiser down at Navy Pier, there will be a whole bunch of people who are there because Paul and Sandra Fulmer brought them into the program. And Ken could mention names who did the same thing. John can mention names who did the same thing. But for those are the founders of this program. People who believed that an experience like this for young adults who would be serving the church in the Chicagoland area was worth investing time and talent and their, you know, treasure to make become a reality.
We had to meet for like 2 years. I would say about 2 years before Amate House got off the ground. And you mentioned Paul Fulmer. I can remember when we were meeting, and really it was kind of like a down meeting. So you're trying to, at this point, just sell an idea. We didn't have a director. We didn't have any volunteers, and we didn't have any money. But we did pull together this very talented board of people, some of which, like Paul, were very high-powered. But eventually it just got to the point where you had to kind of build it and they will come. So we had to find a place that would house Amate House, kind of like on the fly. So some of you may be familiar with Old St. Pat's Parish. And Jack Wall, who was a pastor there at the time, he offered us the use of his convent for 1 year because he had other plans for it. But we said, well, this is our shot. Let's see if we can get this off the ground. So we were preaching in different parishes and raising money for an idea. And people say, oh, you know, well, this idea worked. But, you know, we probably had, what, $4,000 in the bank or something. And we needed a director. We recruited Mary Rakobinski, whose name you might see around. And Mary came in. It's kind of like, yes, you know, I'll give us but it was a real risk in terms of anyone, you know, everybody interested in the job market out there, a real risk for her because we didn't have her salary. We didn't even have her salary.
But she didn't know that.
But she didn't know that. Exactly. And we had I think it was 8 volunteers in the first class. But once that started and they got out to 8 different sites and you were able to talk concretely about all the wonderful work that they did. Those people saying yes, and the board members that said yes, catapulted this into what it's become.
Just listening to these stories, and just thinking of all the people that have come along that really originated this. You know, we should teach like you should chant this. There should be it's really an expression of the communion of saints, and there are some people who have gone on to the kingdom passed away, and it really is this expression of the people of God, and some terrific people that show up just on time, and the generosity and connections you just can't predict. There should be an Amate, kind of communion of saints, and you're the next bunch of saints, right? You're the next generation of carriers of this notion that young adults can come together in community and simplicity and service and understand the gospel and be seized more deeply by God's will for you at this. So you're the next bunch of saints. So it would be quite a long litany right now. Probably would last sometime into October. So maybe it's better that we don't have it. But you should tell the stories of some of the...
Yeah.
Well, Sister Mary Ellen Nolan would lead the
At the
list.
top of the list would be Mary Ellen Nolan. And she was a Mercy nun. She had been the president of Mercy Hospital.
Mm-hmm. Vice president.
And vice president of Mercy Hospital in Chicago. And, in many ways, she really, when the rest of us, were perhaps a little bit tired of the nuts and bolts of trying to pull this program together, she's the one who just dug down really deep and made sure it started. And she did this despite the fact that she was dying of cancer at the time. As John mentioned, we had gotten Jack Wall to let us use the convent at Old St. Pat's, and he let us use that for free. So that saved a lot of money. And we had signed Mary Rakobinski to a contract, even though we didn't have the money to pay her. We just figured we would get it. We had gone to Cardinal Bernardine and asked him for permission to kind of do this in the name of the Archdiocese. And he said, fine, as long as you never ask me for money. We were back 2 years later asking him for money, and he gave us some, but that's neither here nor there. So we had a place, and we needed the furnishings for the place. And we looked around the table, and who can get furnishings? Mary Helen raised her hand. And she had a connection through the Mercy Nuns. They were closing a convent, so we got like 20 wrought iron beds and linens coming out,
mattresses,
all kinds of stuff like that.
A few things in the hospital.
Who died on this mattress, sister?
So we had these beds in this otherwise empty old building, and it had been empty for years, and it was full of dust and dirt and badly in need of painting. One of the early volunteers that we had recruited, Mark Krylowitz, kind of showed up before everybody else and started painting the place for us. And Mary Ellen Nolan was there day after day, scrubbing floors, cleaning toilets, setting up beds, ironing linens, and all this kind of stuff. And again, despite the fact that she really was in the final days of her life. She, I think she was a little pissed at us because we weren't there anywhere near. She was especially pissed at John, I remember. We weren't down there anywhere near as often as we should have been, and we were full of excuses of other more pressing things that we needed to do. But she was determined that this was going to happen and that the place was going to be hospitable and warm and equipped for that first group of 8 volunteers. But round about August, of that summer when we were starting, we didn't start as early back then. We used to start I think in the first week of September. Around about August, she really started to decline. And she was really on her last legs and could no longer do any work. And she eventually was hospitalized and in hospice, I think.
Yes, and way out west in a hospice owned by the Sisters of Mercy.
Yeah, and it came to a point where she wasn't going to be able to do anymore, and I think it was really one of those sort of unfinished business things in her life, and she was very concerned that the program would get started. And Ken went out to visit her. I'll let Ken tell that part of the story.
And it's one of those things where you hear where people are in a coma and they're in their dying days, and so her eyes were kind of fixed on the ceiling and whatnot. And I was with a friend of hers who was a Sister of Mercy, and really just took the opportunity to thank her. Because I'm a great believer that even when people are in a coma, that they can hear, what you say. And I just said, on behalf of the board and John and I, we want to thank you for all you did. We never would have gotten this open without you, and you were absolutely fantastic, And I anointed her, and right down the side of her cheek came this tear, just dripping down. So her sweat, her blood, and her tears were really in Amate House. So one of the awards that we give at the end of the year at the fundraiser is the Sister Mary Ellen Award for people who have done this. But she's really an example of so many people who gave so much, like Paul Fulmer and Sandra Fulmer, and all of the people we recruited. It's like all of them were behind us. I mean, they were more confident perhaps in us than we were. They all said, yes, this can be done, and we will do this. And Sister Mary Ellen Nolan is a symbol of that kind of love that really is in this room.
You know, and we tell you all this stuff, it's ancient history. I mean, all this stuff happened before any of you guys were born.
Jeez.
Don't say that, John.
And it's, you know, it's shocking to me, shocking to us, I think, because, you know, every year we come here and you guys look the same.
Same age.
I mean, not that you're not each individuals and all that kind of stuff, but you're sort of the same age, you know. Another group of fresh out of college kids and raring to go. And we feel like we're the same, although I think when you look at us, you don't necessarily think that way anymore. And you know, we used to think of the volunteers as almost our contemporaries, and now we kind of think of you as our grandchildren, perhaps. and you know, the reality is that, you know, I have kids who are about of an age maybe to be Amate House volunteers, and there are former Amate volunteers who have kids who may be part of the program in you know, years to come, and time moves on. But I guess, you know, we tell you these stories, I guess, just because we want to make a connection with you. And I think the connection is this. We want you to know at a time when my hunch is most of you are probably feeling some of that same trepidation or uncertainty about what you've gotten yourself into. You know, when you finally actually get here and you kind of look around and you realize, you know, it's water or lemonade, it's not Coke or Gatorade. You know, and I don't know what they serve you now to eat. In the old days, it was like pounds and pounds and pounds of government-issued cheese. Hopefully the diet has improved slightly over the years. But, you know, there's all kinds of questions that I'm sure you have. You look around the room and you haven't been together long enough to, you know, for one another's personalities really to emerge. So mostly what you see is how odd that person is, you know, or, you know, that person really doesn't seem very friendly. And, you know, all of that is going to change over time and probably very quickly, but you're sitting here in a moment right now, not unlike those moments that we had. You know, when we first sat around that table talking about it, or that first week when we welcomed that group of 8 volunteers, and you know, we're cautious about not telling them just how flimsy this whole infrastructure was. And, you know, there's a connection in terms of sort of that sense of tentativeness about where you're at. And I guess, you know, we enjoy coming back every year because we want to come back and assure you that what you are doing is spirit-filled, you know? And they won't all be good days. And there will clearly be some bad days, you know? A lot of times they're in February, I've heard over the years from different volunteers, you know, when you're well past the point of excitement about meeting these new people and are pretty sick and tired of them. And the weather's bad, and you know, the job is becoming a little bit too routine and all that kind of stuff. But you'll move through even those days, you know? And you'll come to a point, I think, where you will begin to appreciate a number of things that right now just are vague ideas, you know? I think you'll come to appreciate maybe not why you did this, but the value of having done it. And you'll come to appreciate not just, you know, who these people are, but how meaningful they will be to you for the rest of your lives. And you'll come to appreciate, you know, not just kind of what are some of the realities of the world out there that you might somehow or another address through your talents and your generosity and your love, but you will have some real concrete, real tangible memories of having done that, you know? And you'll wake up one morning, I don't know when it'll be, but you'll wake up one morning and you will suddenly realize something, you know, amazing has happened. Yeah. And I say that with some confidence because it has happened every single year of the 28 years of this program. It has happened every single year. And I'm not saying that there hasn't been some guys and girls along the way who maybe regretted the decision and ran fleeing into the night as soon as they could. But there have been many, you know. And most of them, I think, walked away from their experience at Amate House and their experience, whatever house they were in or whatever community they serviced, whatever type of work they did, with a profound appreciation of the people with whom they interacted in their service, of the people with whom they shared their lives at Amate House, and maybe most importantly, a more profound appreciation of the way that they themselves could be a gift to the world for the rest of their lives. And that's what we want you to know. That's why we're here today. We want you to know how much we believe in that for every single one of you.
Yeah, so sometimes the volunteers express that sentiment, the alums. Amate volunteer wrecked for life. And in some way, a ruin for life, something like that. This is the big, and it's so reminiscent of me. We were all ordained in May of 1981. It was the day they shot the Pope, right? We had nothing to do with it. We were
I do recall that I was lying next to John on the floor of the chapel, right. and the bishop interrupted the ceremony to announce that the Pope had been shot.
Yeah.
And John turned his head to me and he said, "Stay down."
Boom. But one of the great joys of serving as a priest was, I remember when I got my first assignment, right? So I drove to the neighborhood. It was in the evening. It was at night, and I remember driving through the neighborhood and just thinking, "Wow, what families will I fall in love with? You know, what kids, what stories are going to emerge? What connections and twists and turns?" And so you're going to get your first assignment, and it'll really be the excitement of a new priest, right? Because I think one of the great things about Amate House is that it obliterates the distinction between lay people, what a strange adjective that is, lay, and the ordained male presbyterate, as the church understands it now. You're called to this, right? And you're going to get that first assignment and spend some time walking through it while it's still new. And I think you're some pretty wide awake young adults to have chosen this as an experience, right? The ministry that you will now be engaged in will make you even more wide awake. To the extent that you, in some ways, won't walk in rhythm with the rest of the world. And that's a good thing, but it's all scary. And I think you should depend. I think the hardest thing for Christians to believe is that we're loved by, that we're the beloved, we're God's beloved. No one believes that. We say it a lot, but I think our actions and our beliefs, our self-belief doesn't match, our rhetoric doesn't match actions. But you wouldn't be in this room unless you had sort of this living, breathing relationship with God, who has opinions about how the poor should be loved. God has opinions about this. And you said yes because you are an expression of God's belief about how the suffering and the marginalized get loved. Trust that you are the beloved. Trust this. And, and you'll learn the truth of the psalm. I forget which one it is. If I was Protestant, I would know which number it is, but I'm not a Catholic. So maybe it's not even a psalm. So it's a song, though. I know it's a psalm. Eye has not seen, ear has not heard what God has ready for those who love God. You got no idea what's prepared for you. But it's all good. It's AG. But don't lose track of the fact that you are here as an act of love. And there's one theologian that says the gospel can be reduced to two words. Stay awake. You're going to be so awake this year. And where you'll be 11 months from now, OMG. Right?
You can tell he's at a high school, can't you? He's got all these...
We're at a high school. Yeah. No, but it's true. And you got to have confidence in that. And you shouldn't have confidence now, because you know what the hell you're doing. It's all about falling in love. It's all about falling in love.
We had a crusty old theology teacher, Charlie Meyer, at the seminary, and he's a very prolific writer and unique individual. Kind of spent a lot of time by himself, and he'd buzz around on his motorcycle around the lake at Mundelein. You'd see him occasionally. But he said one thing. He said, once you say yes to God, you're really in trouble. And I think that that's what John's talking about. You don't know quite where that path's going to lead you. You know, like the decision you made to be here, you know, what your experience is going to be like when you get to your site. You know, you don't know quite where that's going to lead you. But I believe that is the Spirit leading you. The fact that you're here, the Spirit is leading you to become a new person, really. I mean, as we all evolve in our personalities. When we started this program, and throughout all the boards, the board was really clear that this program is not just about your service. That's part of it. Service is part of it, but the primary is it's about you. It's about your time here in this, you know, 9-month period of time or year period of time where you're discerning, you know, your next move. Am I going to go to school? Am I going to, you know, get a job? Where am I going to get a job? And things of that nature. But that in that discernment, what's important is to continue that commitment to the kingdom, to continue that yes to God.
You know, and along the way, you know, things are going to evolve, just as this program has evolved. It looks very different today than it did 29 years ago. Although those core values of service, community, and reflection, you know, are sort of the foundation of the program, everything else has sort of evolved around it. John was talking earlier about sort of that litany of people that, you know, whose dedication to this sort of vague idea gave it some initial form, and then who have helped to shape it over the years. Every single one of them, you know, along the way is a founder of this program, and you will be the next generation of founders. You will make it what it will be this year. You know, after that initial director, Mary Rakubinski, when she finally found out how little money there was, you know, no, she stayed for 2 years. And imagine how hard it would be to be the founding director of a program like this, where everything was on. She didn't have a secretary. She didn't have any program directors or house, you know, coordinators. It was all on her. And she gave us, you know, 2 incredible years of hard work to get things started. And when she finished those 2 years, we were once again without funding. And now we had no director. And I remember we went to a bar after a committee meeting. We went to a bar and we sat there and we said, well, you know, is it time to just pull the plug? And, you know, the signs all pointed to yes. It's, you know, it was a nice thing for a couple of years, but maybe it's not sort of a lifelong kind of a project. But we decided, you know, let's give it one more shot. Somebody had the idea, let's call this guy Steve Rybczynski, whom we had gone to school with. And you know, maybe he would be interested in taking on the position as director. Lo and behold, we called him. He was recently married. He and his wife came and served as kind of co-directors for the next period of a couple of years. And then we said, you know, let's go back to Cardinal Bernardine. You know, let's kind of sheepishly walk in there, tail between our legs, and say, yes, Cardinal, we know, we promise we've never asked you for money, but the reality is it's either you give us some money or the program ends. And we said, well, who would do that? And, you know, they elected me. So I went in there and I had that conversation with him, and he said, John, I don't have any money to give you, but let me send you to Father O'Connor or somebody at the Extension Society, and maybe he can help you. And of course, Cardinal Bernardine immediately made a call to Father O'Connor, and he gave us $50,000.
Go figure.
And it was enough to sustain us, you know, through most of that year. And along the way, then we said, you know, we really got to replenish our board members. We can't be relying on the same group of people that have now been maybe into their 5th or 6th year of working on the planning and the development of this program. So we went out again and sought another, like the 2nd generation of board members, people like Barb and Gary Schuring, who have just been incredibly generous, again, with their financial resources, but for many, many, many years in trying to get us organized, you know, in teaching us sound business practices, you know, and suggesting that maybe we should actually keep a ledger of money that we spent, you know, not just spend it. You know, of upgrading the menus, you know. They suggested, how about a fundraiser? Hadn't occurred to us, you know. Our first fundraiser was at a bar on 103rd Street.
Right across
Last year.
from St. Xavier College, Gilhooly's Bar.
I think it cost $5 to get in.
Made no money.
All you could drink. We made
Sure
no
had
money.
fun.
We had a raffle though. We had a raffle for a used car.
We did. Somebody donated a car and we raffled it off.
We stuffed it. We stuffed it with like rafts and life preservers and beach balls and stuff, and we billed it as a spring break special. We guaranteed it would get you there. You're on your own getting back. You know?
And actually, the person that won the raffle at the end of the night, maybe about midnight or so, went outside. It was in January or something. Tried to start it. The battery was dead. So that's all right. We'll pick up the jump. You know, we got to jump. You're on your way.
So you know, we went from really running things by the the skin of our teeth or the seat of our pants to realizing that there were people that were a lot smarter than us and probably more dedicated than us in terms of getting us organized. And they taught us how to do it and eventually took over the program. Chris Murphy was one of the directors for a number of years. Can't even remember all the directors. Mark LeBeau for a number of years.
They're both in ministry, one at DePaul, one at Loyola.
Right. The one continuity that the program has had that started really pretty early on was Chris Wagar, and she's really the one. And did you start with Barbara Schering or around the same time, Chris? I think between Barbara Schering and Chris Wagar, they basically, took us by the collar and said, "You don't know what you're doing," and let us show you, And then eventually they said, "We won't bother showing you. We'll just do it," and they did, And at that point, I think the three of us, our active involvement really was pretty much over, And we're sort of cheerleaders now from the side. So people who knew what they were doing, came to the forefront. And John Lucas and the program staff that you have now is the best group of people we've ever had in terms of their dedication, their competency, their sensitivity to your needs as volunteers, and trying to match you up with opportunities that will best tap into your talents and your generosity and so forth. So, it's been an amazing, evolving kind of a thing. And that's why, again, Amate House is not about us as founders or even that initial group of people that really founded the program. It's what you will make it this year. You are this year's founders, and that's all that's going to matter in the long run.
Yeah, I think that spiritual dynamic, so that in this sort of iconic story of how Amate emerges, there's always been people who've shown up right on time for the evolution of what we experience as part of the manifestation of God's will in the world. You are going to show up right on time for someone in your ministry sites. You are the ones who are now right on time for a group of kids or some elderly or an institution that's trying to find its way. You are the ones that are right on time now. And I think that's sort of the unpacking of the latest generation of Amate House. It's always been sort of these wonderful, providential, unexpected, bountiful appearances of grace that has allowed this thing to go on for 28 years. And now when you go in, you don't know who you're right on time for. And you know what? Someone in your ministry is going to be right on time for you. So it's really going to be an experience of being right on time. And I just hope you journal through this. I mean, sort of in the cheap advice deal, journal this year, right? It's really going to be a rich year. And take the time to reflect. Make sure you're reading good theology and spiritual. No junk spiritual food. This is, the menu might be junk, but in terms of your interiority, you got to really read good, rich stuff, depend on each other, and you got to pray your ass off. It's the 15th station. No, it's not 15th station. But you're it's really such a rich year.
Because it's about 100 degrees in here, these will be my
how's
final
the AC?
thoughts.
Yeah.
My final thoughts.
Good old Amate
And
House
I'm not going to
AC.
talk about, although as they were talking about my age, I was starting to dream about a senior Amate House.
Right.
Amate House for LOL. Thank you. My final thoughts is, as you go into this year, for a lot of people, I know, having talked to people that have gone through it, it is a year of discernment.
Yeah.
And I remember reading something that Karl Rahner, a theologian, wrote, like, pray your desires. And I really never understood it until I caught onto a more modern thing, is follow your bliss. follow that
Joseph
which you
Campbell.
love, and you'll be amazed at what doors will open up to you as you go forward. So my hope for you for this year is that you're going to have a myriad of experiences. It's always amazing because a lot of time, most of the time, we don't see you again until May at Navy Pier. And to just see the pictures of all the experiences people are here, it brings tears to our eyes because it brings so much hope for the church, hope for the kingdom of God becoming more of a reality on this earth. So I wish that you would pray your desires this year so that all of you in this period of time would come to a point where not only you're just more deeply involved with the love of God who has called you the beloved, but also have a clear path to your next step into the future.
Anything else?
You gotta be the closer, man.
Well,
You're the
John,
closer.
you get a closing shot, John.
Well, I don't know. I work at two high schools on the west side, and as you move into your ministry every day, wherever you're going, have a prayer that sets up the day for you, and say it as you walk into the place. Have your entrance and pathway into wherever it is you're going to do your ministry framed in prayer, because you don't know what. You have to be attuned that any moment, any interaction can be the inbreak of the kingdom. And so pray, and it's not that God is not communicating. It's not that grace isn't flowing all the time. It's just that we're not awake. So have some prayer or some way of getting your mind and your heart right that sensitizes you to the fact that there will be some interaction, some group of people, someone, something that you are there for in ministry. And that this interaction will also ennoble and deepen and make more incarnate the will of God. So don't go into these places fast, drinking 15 cups of coffee, and this is from a guy who's late to everything in his life. But try to have that moment of wakefulness and mindfulness, and be aware that in your flesh, right? You're going in there as incarnate servers of the love of God, going with that consciousness, going with humility. And at the end of the day, figure out what happened. What's been daily bread for you?
And at that end of that day, when you come back here or to the other houses, remember that you're not coming back to an empty house.
Yeah, right.
And that you're here for each other. Mm-hmm. And that was our idea. Long before you were born, when you weren't even a gleam in your mother and dad's eyes, and we didn't have any idea that you, John, or you, Kara, or you, Nikki, or you, Elizabeth, would be here specifically. But we hoped and prayed that you would be. Every single year at Amate Magic, somebody asks me, did you ever think it would develop as it's developed?
Yeah.
And the answer is yes, absolutely. From that day I sat on the porch with Paul Fulmer, I believed this was going to happen, And so when you come back here at night, look around and realize that every piece of furniture in this place, none of it was bought new. There's not a thing in this place, probably not a dish, not a table, not a chair. This was my mom and dad's couch.
Get out.
They sat on this couch watching TV every night for the last 10 years of their lives. This was their new couch, their last new couch. So believe generationally in the power of prayer, that people believed in you and were praying for you before you were born. And, we will pray you through this year, and then we will count on you praying others through the years to come.
Amen.
Amen.
Can you do this, our Father?
Well, I think we should end this with the Our Father. And this is the prayer I pray going in, because it's just the most terrific prayer in the world. All the scripture dudes agree that this comes from the boss's head and the heart. This is not made up by some guy in 120 AD. This is the boss's prayer, right? And I'm always so struck with it. As just said, the first word is our. The most important thing in that opening line is not the subject, Papa, Abba. So we are to God as an infant is to a loving mother or father, but it's our. And then the other terrific ideas are every day you go into your ministry praying that the kingdom will come on earth as it is in heaven. You are bringers and participators in the kingdom. So it goes from a reflection on the nature of God, our Papa, and after you grok God, you got to go into the world to be part of the bringing of the kingdom. And after that, you're hungry. Give us this day our daily bread. Don't let a day float by, because Papa will feed you. You just got to slow down and listen and grok it. Right? And after you've been part of the mighty transaction of the kingdom, you'll know that you're in need of forgiveness. Because the first temptation will be for you to think by the dint of your personality that you brought the kingdom. Mindfulness of forgiveness will keep you humble. And then I think I like this part the best. Jesus knows it's a skewed world. Keep us from evil. It's a tough world, and you'll be in some very tough places. Pray that you and the people that you serve will be kept from evil and temptation. We go wrong so quick. So it's this terrific prayer that sums up so much of the consciousness of Jesus, in touch with Abba and working it out minute by minute. So it's a good blueprint for your year. So why don't we connect up ourselves humanly and physically or something, and pray it slowly. Oh my God. Oh, do we have to stand up? You don't have to stand up. No, we'll stand up because we're old.
We just wanted to see if we could stand up.
We could stand up. Yeah, seriously. All right, so do it real slow. Don't rush through this damn prayer. Do it slow, because it's like good wine. So here we go. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. And forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Amen.
Well, so now that everybody's cooled down, got a little gin and tonic or something. John invited us for 15 minutes before dinner, so this is not going to be long, to field questions. I mean, who would have any questions? I don't know, but really, you have to come through, because we don't have any more to say unless we have a question. No. Floor is open.
Ken, I got a question.
See, he was planning this.
This is the eve of the 30th year. I mean, we're in our 29th year. It'll be 30 years next year. What has been in your minds, what has been the biggest change or evolution that Amate House has gone through since day one? What if you could pick one or two things what you think has stood out in your mind over the last 29 years?
Well, I have to go back to the fundraiser at Gilhooly's or St. Xavier, where it's $5 to get in, probably all the beer you can drink, and we're renting off a donated car that didn't start. You go from there to Navy Pier at, I don't even want to tell you how much a ticket to get in with a silent auction. How much do we raise?
About $150,000.
$150,000, and we probably raised like $3,500. So the infrastructure, the organizational structure has really exceeded my expectation. I really did think this would succeed. I mean, my thing was back when, and I can literally remember the meeting where I thought, people were going to vote, like, should we close the shop or whatnot? And my thought was, hey, if the Spirit of God is really part of this, it's going to go. And if it's not, it won't, and that's fine too. It's not like you want to start something and feel like it didn't succeed, like an ice cream parlor or something. And I really believe that's what continues it, John, is that Spirit of God. But as we expand the alumni base, as we expand the board base, as we expand all the friends, and John has done such an unbelievable job bringing in a lot of his friends and colleagues from the North Shore, you know, that we really do have a really firm base now of financial support to continue on. But it's really all about you. I mean, you know, that's why I like to remind people, if none of you had come this year, there'd be no Amate House. It would be the end. So it's really all about you. I know, John, would be your
I think it's how sophisticated Amate House has gotten in linking up the volunteer with the volunteer site. Because we were just making this stuff up, right? Would you please take an Amate volunteer? And there's nothing worse than an institution taking a volunteer in and they don't know what to do with the volunteer. So I think you're going in, many of the sites you're going into have had Amate volunteers for a while. So, you know, you're going to enter in, there'll be a very high level of engagement. They're not going to figure out who you are and what it is you do. And you've had options. You know, the process for marrying the volunteer with the ministry has really gotten sophisticated. So there's no time wasted. You're not wasting August, September, and October trying to explain who you are and what Amate House is. That's terrific because the year goes fast. I mean, it's going to be Christmas in a week. No, I'm saying, you know, when you dive in, you're going to dive in the deep end of the pool and you're going to be working your brains out. It goes so fast. And not to lose that time at the front end, figuring all the logistical stuff out, that's a big step forward.
looking around.
Where do you wish to see the program in the next couple of years? Do you see this being it, or is there something maybe better that you wish?
Well, this is sort of I'm going to get up on my stool and rant on this a little bit. I would like Amate House to figure out what the next generation's understanding of priesthood. Because we're at a time in the church where I think we're figuring out what priesthood means and what is priesthood beyond the current way we're thinking about it. And it's taken some hits, right? So how is it that we figure out what leadership is for our faith communities that's beyond sort of the collar, the male presbyter deal? Because I just saw a thing on nuns. I mean, like, it was an NPR, the average age for nuns in the United States is about 83. So before I croak, religious women in Chicago, the orders will be gone. That's something that's going to happen in the next 15, 20 years, by and large. You know, there's orders of nuns right now. They closed St. Scholastica, which is a terrific, the Benedictine's been doing that school for 140 years. And now there's not that many left. And they're all old. So what's going to happen to the priesthood, that the numbers are shrinking, right? And I think this is, my understanding of this age is we have to figure out what will leadership and faith communities look like 25 years from now when you're raising your kids. And I think Amate House and this experience is a seat at the table when we talk about a broadened understanding of vocation and leadership in faith communities. So, and I think this is your generation's challenge.
In that light, I believe, you know, in the definition of Vatican II of the church is the people of God, and it's really all of you. And it's the broad church. It's the church that follows Jesus, that's trying to build up the kingdom of God on this earth. And to answer your question, I was amazed too in 28 years out that we bought the house in Little Village. I mean, that's an amazing thing. So I'm maybe just getting older. They're all kidding about that. But I keep expectations low. You know, really keep expectations low, because I think really part of the problems in our society is people have such high expectations of life after college or the work life or even married life. You know, keep expectations low. And the expectations, if we can just kind of continue and impact the number of lives that we impact every year, and really where the yes to God becomes rooted in somebody's heart, that's going to continue on into the future, that's transformative. And that's what I'd like to see. So I don't have to, you know, see constantly expanding, but it's just deepening the experience and maybe improving the food. But that's up to you. Yeah, that's.
Looking back, would you do anything differently or alter anything about the program?
Well, it's hard to say, you know, because, you know, I can't really think of anything, because I think, you know, in any organization, in any nonprofit organization, the key is the leadership. And I think we were really lucky getting Mary Rakobinski to take that risk. Mary's a very talented woman, probably as an MSW. She worked in a hospital in Indiana. And then, you know, to have Chris Murphy and Mark LeBeau and John Lucas, you know, that it's just gotten better and better. What I would do different, it would really be hard to say, because I'm just really grateful that initial group didn't fold the tent. It's kind of like, you know, it's kind of like following your dreams. Everybody here has a dream, and I say, you know, follow your dreams. Go after that which you love, and that will be, you know, have confidence in that. Confidence with faith with God, that God is with you in that dream. I can't think exactly of what I would do different. It'd be nice to have a lot of money as we started, but if you did, it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the same experience. And I don't think the board members, when we had our 25th anniversary, they were going to give us an award, but we said, no, the award goes to the founding board, because we couldn't get this off the ground by ourselves. We needed all this talent, and we needed the financial support too.
I don't know, I'm glad we figured to get out of the way. You know, it's just surprising, you know. So I was part of the founding of 2 high schools on the west side, and where you start, you have this notion, but you have no idea how this notion gets incarnated and implemented, and there will come those moments when you want to fold in the tent, and there's all these, I think it's Goethe's quote, and I'll get it completely wrong, but the sense of the quote is, until you commit, right, until there's hesitancy, once you commit and say yes, all manner of resources and relationships and possibilities come into play that wouldn't have come into play unless you said yes. So this deep institutional belief in the providence of God. And I'm glad we were dumb enough and smart enough to get out of the way of the inflow of God's incredible providential assent to this wacky notion. So I think we were smart enough to know that we were dumb.
It's a pretty awesome wacky notion at that.
You know, this is part of the Catholic tradition for 2,000 years. There's always been communities of mostly young people coming together to figure out the gospel, figure out simplicity and service. This is as old school as you get. So it's not like it's a new idea. So
John's the president of North Lawndale Prep, College Prep in North Lawndale, which is a tough neighborhood of Chicago. It's a charter school. And tell them your statistics on sending kids to college. I mean, you have to do it. It's a wonderful.
No, we're great. You know. Well, we'll break it out this way. So, and those of you in education should use this year figuring out the rock'em sock'em world of education and educational policy. So right now there's 402,000 kids in Chicago public schools. It's a lot of kids, right? 80% low income. Low income is $24,000 for a family of 4. That's poor. Family of 4, $24,000. 97% of our kids are low income. The graduation rate now for Chicago public schools is 56%. So you start with 100 kids, and 56 will get out of high school. Only half of those kids go on to college. So you got 25 of the original 100 going on to college, and only a third of those will finish college. The national rate for college graduation for low-income people is 17%. And President Obama's notion is, you know, access to a quality education is the thing that really, this is the best anti-poverty program in the world. Terrific schools that don't leave kids behind and does what needs to be done. So NLCP, you know, our graduation rate's about 85%, and 90% of our kids go to college, and college resilience and completion rates About 80%.
And
So
that's
they're terrific numbers.
phenomenal.
But that should happen at
that
every
is just
school.
phenomenal.
So those of you that go, those of you that are going into education, really figure this out. In Chicago, it's a hot issue. There might be a strike. The country's trying to figure out no child left behind, and we got to figure out how to educate our poor.
And I want to add something to that rate, because it is a phenomenal rate.
That's good that you're doing this. Pay you off.
Yeah, we didn't plan this. But when I tell people this, and I say, because this is a charter school. Now, we could argue about charters versus public education. We could have that conversation. But this is a charter school that is focused on North Lawndale. It's focused on the area. But people say to me, how do you think they do that? And knowing John, who's the president, and how inspirational he can be, and knowing some of the even Amate folks, I think.
We've had a lot of Amate folks at the school.
And John's recruited other people. I said, what I know, why they do this, is because I know they love these kids.
Yeah.
So as you go forward, you're going to change lives by loving the people you meet. They love these kids, and it pays off.
Amate.
Amate.
Love imperative. You're just making stuff up now, aren't you? Just to be kind.
This is the 2-minute warning.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, we're just starting our year, but where have you seen kind of the Amate grow beyond the year experience in the volunteers from the past?
Oh my gosh. Where have we seen them?
Like just the whole community grow beyond.
Well, the marriages and the kids would be one thing I'd mention. But no, it's just fantastic. But I mean, literally, and one of you here will probably do it, when the Amate volunteer at Navy Pier gives the reflection for the year. And not just that, but the pictures of everybody and what they've done. Literally, it brings us to tears. Not because it's our idea or anything like that, but just because of this, the phenomenal amount of good that you can do in a year. And there's been a talented group of people. I think really I think that you're going to work, Gordon, maybe on strengthening the Alumni Association. There'll be a lot of contacts out there for you. I used to run, before I was at HUD, I worked for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development now. But prior to that, I was the director of the Edgewater Community Council. I could show you on the map. And Mike Leachman, a graduate of Amate House, worked with me. Fantastic guy, graduated from Notre Dame. Eventually I said, Mike, you got to go back to school. And he went back, he got his doctorate in sociology at Loyola, and now he works for the Center for Congressional Budget Priorities in Washington. I'm kind of mixing up that name. As a researcher, fantastic guy. I mean, we have people all over who have, is that what you meant? Who just continue to do wonderful things.
Well, and I think what's going to happen to you, Sasha, and all of you guys is when you end out this year, a lot of people have to figure out what's the balance of having a life of meaning, doing work that matters, and being able to support a family or live a lifestyle you think is reasonable. And I think Amate House frames out that question. How do you both have work that matters and tips the compass of the world a little bit toward true north, and at the same time be able to have a lifestyle where you're not living in a cave? And I think the good news is, I'm glad that question will be in your head. The good news is you can have both. Because I think people think you either got to go out there and earn the money, and you got to support your family, and, well, my meaning, happiness. That's why we watch cable TV. It's unbelievable the number of commercials for people who are depressed, right? It's a spiritual problem. People are not having there's not a surfeit of meaning in their life, right? That's why they got all these things. So I think, in your life, as you move forward, you're going to figure out the right balance. But you're never going to be able to live a life that's light on meaning. And I think that's one of the great contributions that Amate House gives to its alumni.
And it's kind of like travel. If you travel to Europe, my daughter just spent a semester in France and got to a lot of different countries. You're never the same. You never looked at she's still talking about the euro and the problem with, your experience is with you, and it just broadens your horizons. In this experience, you're going to touch perhaps clients and people who you normally wouldn't, and that's going to become part of you, and it's really going to change you and probably shape the way that you see the world, going forward. So it can be quite a transformative experience. Amen. Time to eat. All right.
Yo.
Thank you, everybody.
Deo gracias.
So what was your role at our house?
I need a lot.
And then we go out. I mean, it's not like a salad place, but there is options.
Maybe what they get
Spinach, best things.
But that's what I mean, but it's not too much on the size,
Downstairs will be we tried to make pasta last night.
Oh my god, that salad
Looks really good.
I like didn't see that coming.
I did not see Elizabeth's sassiness. I did not see it at all.
1 week later.
Well, that's a week later. We have to figure it out. We'll wait till
That's right on my face. I feel like we're kind of part of a reality TV show right now. Because like the camera's pointing straight at me and I'm seeing you.
Ladies, I don't like people who walk slow with strollers.
Put it on record. That's fine. I will own it.
He doesn't like the transit and they used to get after like nobody reforms.
Hopefully they do one of those cute things like they use when I'm saying. That would be like a Hallmark channel.
Good place.
Yeah, I love just both places. I love with my brother. There were 2 tables that did 20, and then there were like half dozen that did 10 grand, and then it went to 5 grand and 2.5 grand. I mean, there were lots of really.
I saw the wild one person just ran up. Yeah, like people were big.
You came just for like.
Go back for anything. I'll probably run half of.
I know.
He just started high school. Well, maybe it's sophomore. I don't have one. A couple people have suggested.
I really like Charles.
You thought I was the house coordinator?
The leading suggestion for a long time was Michael, and then Charles came and threw that away.
Great concentration.
Telling lies.
That's right. For sure. I was like posing above us.
Yes. Very visionary.
No, you're sometimes do a lot of splits and whatnot, so
I'm excited.
I don't want to go to law school or be a lawyer.
I mean, all of these are like real-time jobs, which I'm like,
I know some of those.
RA is one
I
thing.
actually know people.
Program assistant, helping scholars and stuff is another thing. Right?
So it's good you figure out.
I can't do it.
well, at first the camera made these
They don't actually look at the
It's like the last really good meal.
so then it came up that we were also doing the same thing.
Wait, sorry, are you
Ray's not even paying attention. She's on the
root beer floats, or if you don't like root beer, we have orange. And if you need something diet, it's Coke.
I thought the
So you can help yourselves up here, okay?
I would have
Oh, okay. Come on, grab one.
Let him go.
Oh, can we just take it?
So just grab an ice cream and.
Oh, it is. Okay. too much too fast.
Maybe I wouldn't recommend doing half and half. It might turn out.